Hey there folks, Bob Yeager here. This is kind of woodcraft. It's more homesteady, but it's something we can learn from our wilderness skills. So when I walk through the forest around my house, I look for things that grow. So I'm looking at, like, the wild ferns. What does it take for them to grow? Wild garlic, wild onion, those types of things. And I leverage what I learn out there and here where my garden's at. So I have about an acre here of garden space, and right now I'm preparing my wife's raised beds. And what's nice about the raised beds, a lot of people kind of scoff at the expense of the lumber and everything like that. Actually, look around your industrial areas and stuff. This crate right here came from a place that gets granite in, and they just chop these up and get rid of them. They end up with a stack of them in their back lot that they can't get rid of. So I go and pick them up. Same with like pallets and barrels I use. I just go pick them up. So I see them on Facebook Marketplace, or I'm driving by an industrial area. We go and pick them up. My son, he collects aluminum cans to pay for his scouting stuff. Takes a lot, but we have a dump truck, so we just wait until it's completely full and we take it down to the scrap yard. And then we always save, you can't really see all that well, but we have some scrap metal back in the back here. We always save all that stuff. We load it up on the truck, take it down. That pays for scouting adventures. But with the woodcraft skills, so I save all of my scrap logs and I go into the woods and I get any rotted logs, things that fell down and things like that, and I cut them all up, and I'll fill about half this bed. And you can see it's pretty tall. I fill about half these beds with logs, rotted material, stuff from the wilderness that's just laying on the hillside and stuff. So I don't pay for the boxes. I get pallets. I get any kind of refuge type crates and stuff that people are throwing away, big wooden boxes, scrap lumber. I can cut the ends off and make good boxes out of them and stuff. Fill half of that with just stuff I find in the woods and logs and stuff from when I'm cutting firewood, and scrap bark and all that stuff, and I put it in there. And then what I do is I put a layer of hay. So if you see this part of my garden's been covered in hay since last fall. I do it mostly for weed control, but it also puts some nutrients back into the soil. And then I'll scrape all that hay out, and when I'm doing beds like this, the next layer I put on top of the logs is like hay, leaves. So my fall leaf cleanup, everything goes into the garden or into the raised beds. Then I have this high spot here where I had some logs on the ground and I got to till it down. So I figured, well, there's a great big mound of dirt there and a lot of it's black. So I just put it in the next layer. Okay. And then what I'll do is I'll put another layer of like leaves or hay. Then I get mushroom compost. So mushroom manure, it's what they use to grow mushrooms. It's got cow manure in it, and it's basically done growing mushrooms and everything. So I get that because it doesn't have any chemicals in it or anything like that, from a local landscape supply place. And it's $35 a cubic yard, which is about 900 pounds. And I get 2 cubic yards on my dump truck, which is nearly a ton. And this bed, this small bed here, this small one here, this one here, and that one over there, and then this one. And then I planted a row of grapes over here. Used up about that amount. Okay. And it didn't take that much, and it was like $37 and some change. Okay. So I don't buy a bunch of bags of stuff. It's too expensive that way. And if you want to pay 20 bucks extra or 10 bucks extra, however close you live to like a landscape supply place, they'll just deliver it and dump it right in your driveway for you. Right. So then I just use this little lawn cart to haul it back here when it's too muddy to get my truck back here. But the reason I'm recording this video is, so I start with filling these with logs, with any debris, grass clippings, leaves, and I get it about halfway filled with that stuff, about to here. Then I'll fill with dirt, and then I'll put another layer of leaves on top, and then I put this mushroom compost on top of that. Why do I do it like that? Well, that's permaculture, and that's the way nature grows things. It does it in layers, right? And just like in my garden, when whatever doesn't go to my chickens over here, and they give me manure and things, and they have pine bedding inside their house, and their manure and all the straw I throw down over there. They chew it all up and they make compost from it, and I put that into the gardens and into the raised beds. Whatever plants are left over that don't go to the chickens and I don't hang up to dry for the seeds, go right back into the garden. I leave them lay, I let them rot, I cover them with leaves and hay, I let it rot down, and then I come through and I lightly till. I don't till deep, I till lightly. I don't want to destroy all the microbes in my soil, right? But after a while, you build this up, and it doesn't take much, right? Just like my grape arbors. They don't take up much space, and we can grow a lot of food on those. And I use that same method I use here to prepare the beds for my grapes, and to prepare the rows in my garden, and to prepare my potato beds. This method of layering material is really, really helpful to the growth and the nutrients in the soil. After a while, the logs that are in here take a couple years. They rot down, they break down. They're half rotted when I put them in there anyway. Then you have the nitrogen layer of the grass clippings and the leaves and everything, then a layer of good dirt, and then a layer of your compost on top. And I might top it, just brush coat it with compost each year, just add a little bit more. And that keeps breaking down and breaking down. Before you know it, you can reach your hand straight down in there about 14, 15 inches of good soil. So at that point, all I do is loosen the soil. So I use whatever, a pickle fork. I use just a little cultivator, weeder. And I just lift the soil and let air into it and loosen it up. In my garden, it's kind of the same methodology that the wilderness uses. I use a double dig method. So what I'll do is I'll dig out a trench and I'll put that dirt into my tractor cart and just keep it there. Then I'll dig another trench right beside it and I roll that dirt over into the first trench. Then I dig another one and roll that dirt over into the next trench. By the time I get to the end of my row, I have one trench left, and that's the dirt from there, and I put it in there. So all I'm doing is turning the soil, gently turning the soil. And then I'm adding my compost layers or my mulch that I get from the woods, and I add those layers to it. And then I put hay on it for the winter time to allow the winter to break it down. This is the way nature does things. So when we're thinking woodcraft, we don't have to just think about being out in the woods and camping and all these things. We can think about that for growing what I call my victory garden. Look up the history of victory gardens and why I would do that right about now. These skills that you do at home, even if you don't have a lot of space, you can do it in raised beds or grow bags or planters. Use the skills and observe nature, the way nature works and the way nature decides to grow things. And think to yourself, okay, well, when autumn comes, all these leaves fall down. Where do they go? Well, they stay on the ground, they break down. Then vegetation grows up through them. Then all those leaves turn to dirt. Then the next year it happens again. And the roots of the trees loosen the soil around. Okay, so the soil's not compacted. If you look at a clear-cut forest, where they clear-cut trees, you'll notice that the dirt is very hard. And there's hardly anything growing in it. And if it is, it's all thorns and thistle and weeds and bramble and stuff. And it's because they took away the growing property of nature. Planting fruit trees. When I plant fruit trees, not only does it, where's my fruit trees? I can't see in the camera. They're right here. So I have 2 peach trees, 2 cherry trees, and I just planted 2 pear trees, and I'm going to be planting more up this way. They loosen the soil, and any fruit that we don't get off of them that rots and falls, it falls and it composts back into the soil, or I give it to the chickens when they make compost for me and they make manure for me, right? So I'm doing what nature does. That's how I grow my garden. I mimic nature all the time. Well, we can't learn those skills of growing like our grandparents did and my parents did unless we observe how nature grows things. Nature puts a cover crop on the ground. The low-lying, what we call weeds, is its cover crop. If you were to lift that, you'd find nice, rich, black soil underneath. So over on the hillside here, going all the way down below my mother-in-law's house to that tiller over there, is my potato hill. I planted cover crop on there for 2 years before I did my potatoes there. Before, they were across the top of my garden here. I just move them around. I use the potatoes, and I use onions, and I use radishes, and I use corn to break the soil, add nitrogen and phosphorus to the soil. And then the next year I can grow something really hardy there, like tomatoes or green peppers or, you know, whatever I want to. And then I move to another place that I want to break up the soil and add nutrients to, and plant my potatoes and those root vegetables, those early root vegetables. Just like right now, we're going to be planting a bed of really, really big sunflowers here because we're going to be cultivating sunflower oil. So for now, I planted, what is it, March? I planted spinach and I planted radishes, just like at the top row down, that's tilled down here. I planted radishes there all across that hillside. It breaks up the soil, it adds nutrients to the soil. I like radishes, I like spinach. It's a good early season crop, a springtime crop. And by the time those things are done, it'd be time to plant my sunflowers, and on that top row, my corn. So I'm just doing the same exact thing that nature does. I'm growing something, and once that's done, it prepared the soil for the next thing. I'm putting layers. I'm creating layers in my bed so I can get those microbes and those nutrients and for things to break down. And each year I'll add layers and layers and layers. And I'll show you what happens as a result. And this is kind of nature at work. So if you look at this radish row right here, the soil's very brown. It's good topsoil, but it doesn't have a whole lot of rich nutrients in it. But if you come over here, where I did bush beans last year, look at the color of this soil. Let's see if you can see that. How black that is. And this, for a couple years, I was putting layers and layers and layers and planting different things here. I started with potatoes. Then I moved into my tomato plants here. And then I did green pepper plants here one year. And then the following year, last year, I did I believe I did my cucumber plants here last year. And this soil's so rich. But every year I add layers of leaves and things. I have no shortage of stuff. I keep adding layers of leaves and things like that. And it just keeps making the soil more rich, more nutrient based and everything. And it looks like I till hard, but I don't. This grass, this is a winter rye. I plant that over top of my garden because it's easy to scrape that off with my tiller and it dies off really quick. So I just surface till just to get rid of that cover crop layer that I put on there. But nice thing about mulching and hay and everything, well, you will get grass growing up through it if you don't have a thick layer. Like here's my Egyptian walking onions. They've been growing through layers of hay and leaves for the past couple years, and they'll spread out. They take up a lot of space, but they add certain nutrients to the soil. But what I'm getting at here is I'm just mimicking what nature does. It does the same thing I do in my garden, and I can learn a lot in my woodcraft, excursions. Excuse me. I pay attention to it, but also it gets back to a previous video I did about a year or so ago. I journal things. So when I observe something in nature and I'm like, hey, I want to remember that for my garden stuff. I want to try that. I want to try what nature did right there. I write it down in my journal and I look back on it and I reflect on it when I'm doing things like this. So quick video, and hope you guys have a great growing season. Go get your victory garden going. Take care.